I remember one guy very specifically, and he came to me because he said, Tracy, I think I'm repelling customers. And I said, well, you are. And he said, how do you know? And I said, what are you trying to prove? And he said, how did you hear that? And I said, that's what I do. Well, get this. He said, I spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to my father. And I said, well, we're going to go ahead and move that out because it's no longer serving you. And we did. It was because it was this defense that said, I'm not letting you in. I know what I'm doing here. And it was repelling people. So it's all shapes and sizes. I do think the research probably more significant around women's voices. And even that data that you were talking about, they have done research to show that when it comes to politics, men's voices are much more likely to be voted for than women's voices.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
All right, Team PYP, Mary Lou Kaiser here, and it is game day at the Play Your Position podcast. And you know what that means. I have today's starting quarterback suited up, ready to take the field. She is going to take us into the world of how our voices impact the results we experience in life and in business. Her name is Tracy Goodwin. Tracy, are you ready for kickoff?
I am so ready for kickoff.
I am too, because it is one of my favorite things ever. We are starting the game. So team, here are some things that I know about Tracy. First of all, for over 30 years, she has been working with hundreds of seven-figure entrepreneurs, executives, business professionals, and celebrities, helping them to shift the sounds that are coming out of their mouths and sending the wrong message with their voice. And she's helping them shift that so the right message comes out and they see different results. This fascination and interest in how voices are subconsciously perceived and the effect that they can have on a person's life started when she was a child. She was raised in a family where children were to be seen and not heard. She wasn't really allowed to speak, but in spite of that, she started winning speaking awards when she was 12 years old, and it was the one platform to use her voice, and she thrived in that space. She has gone on in those years to become an award-winning actor and director. In her freshman year of college, as she was studying acting, she had a horrific event happen on stage, and in an instant, her voice changed. It was in that moment that she set the real stage for the work she does today, which is the psychology of the voice. And as I've already said, the psychology of the voice will transform her clients' voices and lives because she goes deep into the psychology behind what people are hearing when we talk. And gosh, Tracy, I'm so excited for you to take us into this world because as a podcaster, voice is so fascinating to me. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Yes. And so right out of the gate, my first question is always about when you got the call to leadership in the space that you're working in. I've already primed the pump a little. I think it must have had to do with that horrific event on stage. Could you please tell us that story and how it is affecting you playing your position?
Yes, definitely. I in retrospect, there's no doubt that even raised in the family that I was raised in was the setup, was the setting for the work that I do today. But when not to go too deep into that story, but it was this crazy experience where I was in a play and I was in college. I was a freshman in college, and the play I had been in before, I had done the play before, and there was a slap scene in the play. I knew that And this particular director and this particular actor didn't do stage slapping. They did real life hitting. And so, I could go further into that story, but the gist of it was in a literal instant when someone said to me, it was the director, I said, is there any way you can get him to stop hitting me? And she looked at me and she said, you've chosen a profession in which you must suffer for your art. And if you can't, I'll replace you. And literally in that instant, I started talking like this in a pitch like this. And I didn't even know in that moment what had happened, but that was the opportunity. That was the catalyst for me to work with some of the greatest voice masters of our time. I had an incredible knack for voice. I learned a lot, but it was still not on my radar that I was going to be a voice coach. I was an actor. I made my living doing television commercials. I directed plays. And what was interesting was people kept finding me to coach their voices. And I was literally like dragging a mule through the sand. I mean, if you can,
you resisted.
I resisted and I resisted. So when you ask me when I got the call to leadership and you say, was it when that event happened? Probably, but I couldn't wrap my mind for many years around the fact that I was going to be a leader. And it all goes back to my upbringing. Don't say anything. Be quiet. And that was really, but working, having that background, having that experience, working with those voice masters, all these people finding me to coach their voices, that's what ultimately led to the research and the body of work that I did. But I fought it tooth and nail primarily because I couldn't imagine, even as good as I was at coaching voices, how could that be my purpose? Look at my upbringing. That's some kind of a cruel joke, I thought. So it was this, I just couldn't imagine that was my purpose because I was locked into that past. And I coached voices. One of my first, and this was social, there was no social media back then. This was Yellow Pages and right. They're dialing you up. And I just thought that was so strange. I still didn't get it. Okay. I'm still running from making the impact that I was meant to make here. And I directed plays, but I'm coaching people's voices. And I started really in the early years of my career with dialects. I was fascinated with them. And so I taught actors dialects and I removed dialects from business people. My first corporate work was a Fortune 500 company. They brought me in because they had a perception that their accent was negatively affecting how people perceived them. And I still was just coaching voices, directing plays. And I figured out I was fascinated with dialects. And I wanted to know, why does the Irish baby sound Irish? And I'm from Texas and I sound Texan. And what I realized in that research and that fascination was the subconscious actually puts that dialect in. It's a very different methodology, but I can literally shift how I hold my face and become Irish, right? And all I did was shift how I'm holding my face. Why? The subconscious needs to protect the heart. The voice is the orchestra of the heart.
Oh,
right.
Oh, I love that.
Right. So the Irish baby needs to fit in Ireland, in his family, and Tracy, the Texas baby, needs to fit in her family. So this led to, okay, there's a bigger picture here. And what I discovered in my work was that one phrase before we're 5 literally goes into the subconscious and determines how we're going to use our voice for the rest of our lives. Now, it still took years to go back to your question. It still took years for me to understand and really fully embrace that I could make the kind of impact, that I really was a leader. I really struggled to embrace that. But by the time I was in my 30s, it was just full on because I was, I had figured so much out by then. And I wanted to lead people in a direction that they didn't even know existed.
Right. What's so inspirational about that story is it just goes to show you that discovering your purpose and heeding the call, finally saying, I hear you, stop, I get it, I'm doing this now, isn't something that happens in a flash. There may be some triggering events that start the process like you had, but it wasn't on that day or the next day even when you said, oh, I guess I'm meant to be a voice coach. It took a lot more of you being out in the world and pursuing everything but that.
Yes. Yes.
And then I think from what I heard you share, that there was an inkling. You had some consciousness around this could be a thing, but that's not what I'm supposed to be doing this thing over here because maybe that's what you wanted to do, or it was the story you had built up in your head. As we all do, we think, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this because I chose this and not this thing over here. So I love that story from the standpoint of it finally was just too much for you to ignore anymore. And you realized this is what I'm supposed to do. And what a relief to say yes to it.
It really was, because you're right. It was clear. I knew that I was gifted in this area. I couldn't, I had a hard time believing that, but I knew I could hear layers of sounds. I knew I could hear how people were being processed subconsciously. And I'm thinking, okay, this is crazy. This isn't real. I'm surely supposed to be a director or an actor. And it got so loud that, literally no social media. And my dance card is full of people to coach them vocally. And this is, by this point in the game, I'm already up in New York City teaching at Mike Nichols' school. And
oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And just these random, craziest things. I had 4 voice coaching offers out of New York City without even applying for them.
Isn't that incredible?
Okay. So I finally got it and then realized, okay, I'm a voice leader.
Yes. Okay. I have to, are you allowed to say some people you've helped, or do you need to keep confidentiality?
Well, I have a lot of people that I cannot say, but I have certainly people that I've worked with. Most recently, I just coach, and now the show is no longer on air, but I just worked with the people in the show Scorpion. That's how I ended up out in Los Angeles. I just recently worked with Adam Rodriguez, who was on CSI Miami for many, many years. And he did a big show, City of Angels, for Showtime. And I've just worked with him. And I've worked with the coolest people. I mean, I've worked with,
I bet,
I had the opportunity to, and this one I can't say, but I had the opportunity to work with a state Supreme Court justices.
Wow.
Yeah. And so a lot of times when people say voice coach, they think singing and they think actors, and that's definitely true. But what people don't realize is this is really, we lead with our voice. We really do. It doesn't matter what role we're in. The voice leads. It is how we determine everything about someone.
It's amazing. So who coaches you, Tracy? I believe that no one who has been successful in life has done it without the help somewhere along the line of a coach. What has been your relationship as someone receiving coaching?
Well, I'm a huge fan of coaching, and probably further back than I even realized, I admired my father to such a degree that I learned my business ethics and my core values from him. He really was coaching me by example. But as an adult, and as I got further down the tracks in this, okay, this is my role, this is my purpose, I realized pretty early on that I needed to stay in my lane. And I'm not in any way cutting myself down, but it became very clear to me early on as I really moved into the role of entrepreneur that I needed to stay in my lane. And so I have had more coaches than I can even list. I've had sales coaches. I've had mindset coaches. I've had business coaches. I always have a handful of coaches. But I don't ever want to stop learning and growing. I don't ever want to stop getting better. And some of the best coaches I hired to make me better as a voice coach, as a leader in voice. That was why I hired them, because I wanted to up my game for my people.
Yes, 100% agree. I can't even imagine going back to a time not having a coach of some kind because of what you just said. It doesn't matter what the reason behind hiring the coaches, whether it's to help you with your finances, your health, your mindset, your business. The point is that we need people who have an area of expertise and a way of bringing up the people they work with so that we can be better at what we do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And which is what you do for people.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's so critical that because it's really an investment in self.
Yes, it is.
And what I just think that's so important.
It is because, again, the tagline of the show is show up, be yourself, win. Well, if you can't be yourself because you're not investing in yourself to get better, you're never going to win. And winning isn't about beating other people. It's about winning in your life so that you get to the end of your life and you can say, I had a great life, and not be like the people that were interviewed. There was an Australian hospice nurse who kept seeing the same thing over and over and over again with people who had about 6 weeks left to live. And there were 5 regrets that came up, this universal regrets. And I just had a conversation not too long ago for this show with a woman named Mary Mosham, and her episode will be dropping in a couple of weeks from now. And she references that research in her book about, ending burnout, moving beyond just being completely inundated with these pressures that we put on ourselves in life. And a great coach is going to help you not fall into those pits of despair.
Yes.
And
yes.
Focus on what's going to make your life better. And your niche is clearly with what comes out of our mouths and what people think based on what they hear. Without giving away your secret sauce, what's one thing that you find yourself doing with all your clients, no matter what their focus in life may be, from the actors to the Supreme Court justices? Is there some universal thing about voice that you hear and teach on over and over and over again?
Yes, and you might be shocked when I say this. You might think, how in the world does that have anything to do with voice? But the first thing I have to do with people is I have to get them mentally in the now. Because what happens if I am in the past, I am going to have a certain set of sounds in my voice. If I am in the future, which is where everybody is, and many, many people are outcome driven, problem solvers, those are specific sounds that I hear. And I'll tell you why it matters in just a minute. Many, many people are concerned about judgment. If I'm worried, all of that is in the future. And so if I'm in the future thinking, gosh, I wonder if Mary Lou thinks I'm doing a good job. I wonder if I'm getting this right. There's a hesitation in my voice. And that hesitation is going to speak to your subconscious, and your subconscious is going to go, man, it's a shame she doesn't know what she's talking about. And then you're going to decide who I am based on the sounds that you hear. And a bevy of those sounds come from being in the past or the future, or trying to get the words right, or thinking about the words. And then for the outcome-driven people, they're in the outcome. I don't even know where the outcome is. So we miss a connection point because they're vocally there and I'm here. So that is something, no matter who it is, that's how we operate. That's the way the subconscious wants it. And I have to get people in the now, grounded in their message. Their message is in their heart. The voice is the orchestra of the heart. So it all comes full circle.
Wow. That is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. You're right. I never in a million years would have come up with what you just said.
Yeah.
That's where the universal connection is being aware of future, now, and past.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm mind blown here. So I'm pausing. I gotta get back in the now and stop thinking about that. But it is so interesting. I think something that's interesting too, Tracy, is when we find ourselves playing out a position, right?
Mm-hmm.
We think we have everything figured out and nothing ends up going according to game plan. The metaphor of the football game, of course, is you found yourself being sacked, intercepted, or you fumbled the ball. Could you tell us about a time when this happened to you? And then what was the lesson that you learned coming out of it?
Sure. One of the most, and I've had a lot of profound moments in this journey, like some of them we've already talked about, that were these giant neon signs about how I was supposed to do this. And I remember some of the early, I guess maybe I had been in New York City, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. And in the early years of my career, I taught straight voice methodology, which is very technical. There's no criticism here about it, but I knew it was not aligned with what I could hear in my head, because I could hear how people were being processed and what it was costing them. Right. I could discern that tone that said, I don't think you can do this. I would hear those layers, but I was so afraid to teach to that because I literally had convinced myself by not being in the now, I hadn't figured that part out yet, that people would think that was crazy and there was no way I could do that. And it literally drove me to the point where I said, okay, I'm not going to be a voice coach anymore. I can't do this. I made the wrong choice. I was kidding myself. I can't do it. And I literally stopped. I didn't answer the phone. I wouldn't work with anybody. And I started refinishing furniture in my New York apartment. And the phone would ring and I would continue to sand and I would peel the layers off of that furniture. And I didn't do it for too terribly long before I heard a voice in my head that said, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're not here to finish furniture. You're very good at it, but that's not why you're here. You get back in the game and you do it the way you know to do it. And that was truly the day Psychology of the Voice was born. And I started saying to people, I actually hear that you don't believe I can do this. That's why your team isn't doing what you want them to do, because what they're hearing in your voice, you're foreshadowing that you don't believe that they can do it, and their subconscious is literally shutting down. And I started working with the gift I had been given. And it never entered my mind to think that anybody would think I was crazy again, because I was seeing these incredible results and these shifts for people that was giving them inner freedom and giving them more success and building better relationships. And it was all coming from that one thing that I had avoided. So I think if I hadn't completely dropped out of the game, I don't know that I would have come back so strong and so the way I was supposed to. Yeah.
Well, if you believe in the hero's journey framework that Joseph Campbell or taught for all those many, many years, that at some point the hero suffers a wound and that wound sends the hero into exile of some kind. It could be literal, or it could be, in your case, you just shifted careers, but in a way you exiled yourself.
Totally.
You're calling. And I find it so interesting that the work you were doing, you were literally sanding furniture and peeling away layers. And to me, metaphorically, you were sanding off those external shells of what you thought you were supposed to do to get to that beautiful piece of furniture that is the work you do now.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way, but I sure picked up on it like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I actually hadn't really ever thought about it. I know that what you're going to think is probably really cool is that's actually what I do with people is I take away all the voice sounds that they do not need. So,
you
oh my
sand
gosh,
off those.
I sand them off. Oh, that's so cool. Thank you for that. Thank you for recognizing that. I had never thought about it that way, but that's what people say to me. They say, okay, you give us stuff, but what you really do is take away what we don't need anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those layers of paint, that the world has put on us as we go, and then we get buried under it and then think that's what we really are. And it's not.
It's not.
And that's what you do.
It's not. And that's literally there in a nutshell why I do this, because many people a lot of people realize it, but many people almost think they're showing up as their real self. But if they're in inner turmoil and not really showing me who they are comfortably, they're not. They're hidden behind voice masks and barriers that they don't even know are there.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
Where do you see the kind of work that you do with voice? What do you predict is going to impact our world as we continue into the 21st century? You can relate it to the work you do and how people are showing up to our work, or you could just put your crystal ball out and say, these are some of the trends I'm seeing.
Yes. And one of the things and this is critical, and I saw this coming, but they've already got data on this. I'm a data girl. I'm a research girl. I research everything I teach. And what we're seeing because of the pandemic is people are desperate for connection in ways beyond, even people that had friends and family and all of that, they went to work. Our world has changed and people are desperate for connection on another level. So phoning it in isn't going to cut it anymore. And I can connect with you or not based on your voice. I call it voice masks. Are you talking at me? Are you talking to me? Well, no, you're talking to me. It's like hand in a glove. I can connect with you. But for many, many people, they are so hidden behind their masks and getting it right and terrified of letting people in, terrified of showing up, that they're going to miss opportunities. Zoom is not going to go away. We've got this new app in the entrepreneurial and professional space called Clubhouse. I believe that is exploding because people need to hear people's voices. I need to hear your voice. I need to see your face more than ever before because I don't know when I can be in the same room with you, but I have got to have human connection of some kind. So I do think that visibility and that audibility it's not an option anymore to not do that. You can still have your blog. You can still write your emails. But if you really want to impact people, it's time to use your voice.
Interesting about Clubhouse that you brought that up. It is still so new and definitely gaining more awareness and traction. And what you said makes sense to me, why it's taken off like it has.
Yeah, that was no surprise to me. And the great thing about Clubhouse or even like a podcast, we don't have, people get freaked out about video. A lot of my people have struggled, and I know not just my people have struggled with Zoom because they get so in their head about what they look like. This is weird. And Clubhouse, well, it's just your voice. You could be sitting there in your pajamas in your bed for all I know, right? And that's a golden ticket right there. But people, and this is why this work is so critical. We have function in a world that I call tentacles out. I'm reading you. I'm deciding what you think of me, and I'm going to alter who I am based on what I think you think of me. And then everything goes to Zoom and I can no longer read you. I don't even know who I am.
So what you're getting at is that how we think of ourselves is based on the signals that we pick up from other people and what we interpret them seeing us as.
Yes, because that's the way the world works.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. We look for the traffic signal. We look for the referee. We look for the feedback. And that's great, but we've got to reframe that. We've got to bring the tentacles in and figure out what is the best version of us. And then based on what we see, turn the gas up or down based on the best version of us, not let that decide who we even are.
Wow.
And that's one of the reasons that so many people just kind of got freaked out when we went to Zoom. I can't see their faces. I can't read their body language. I don't know how to deliver. Well, it's because your tentacle's out. I want, who are you? How do you want to show up? What are the bits of you? Like, I want to know who you are, not who you think I want you to be.
Yeah, there you just hit it on the head right there.
Yeah.
I have people in my world who fit what you just described, that there is a mask. There's a online mask that they wear about they need to show up in a way that from their vantage point is what they think the world wants from them. And it's not.
It's not.
And it seems phony to people like myself. It feels manufactured and inauthentic, even though I think from their viewpoint, they're trying to make it feel casual, authentic, and real.
Yes.
It's strange. It's a strange phenomenon that the harder you work at being authentic, the worse you become at it.
Right. And the real tragedy for those people is they're just like I was, like that mule in the sand. There is no inner freedom. They're suffering because they're trying to get it right and trying to be and put on the mask. And I say to people all the time when I tell them what their masks are, I say to them, aren't you tired? And every single time they say, I am exhausted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
And that, when you ask me about what do I see the trends are, it's time to put the masks down, friends, because all we want, we've bought into this. I've got to be what I think, I've got to be what I think they need me to be. And then I'm not going to be judged. And then everything we put in place is actually what causes us to be judged. Right?
Oh my gosh. I just recorded earlier today a solo episode about self-forgiveness. And I am comparing, and by the time this episode airs, that episode will have aired. But I'm comparing Ernest Hemingway with Tiger Woods as two men in American culture who there are some parallels and then there are some differences. And around self-forgiveness, Tiger Woods has done some work on himself since his fall from grace. Ernest Hemingway lived in a time when that wasn't allowed for men. And unfortunately, as anybody who knows Ernest Hemingway's story, his life ended in tragedy when he took his own life. And there was mental illness involved, and certainly the years and years of alcohol consumption that contributed to it. But it was also what you're getting at, Tracy, which is these masks that the culture tells us, and it happens for women too, that we are supposed to be. And I found it interesting. I'm going to go back to what you shared at the very beginning of our conversation today, when your voice changed and it went up like 2 or 3 octaves and became more girly versus you have a voice, to me, a very strong female voice. It's deeper, it's rich, it sounds authoritative, and it's also warm. And when girls talk like this and it's really high. And that baby voice that some girls, that becomes a mask for them. Now, some women, that's the voice they were given.
Yes.
And have to work, I would imagine, in a different way to bring that down. Because I've read a little bit about the work that not that work that you do specifically, but just voice in general. And there is data around women's voices, how they sound, and men's voices, how they sound, and how people lean in or lean away from them. And I'm sure you could talk for hours about that. That I'm tying this into the masks of the voice and the expectations that the external world sends us about how you're supposed to show up in sound. And Tiger Woods and Ernest Hemingway, to kind of bring this full circle, both in many ways are victims of the cultural expectations of who everybody thinks they're supposed to be. And they had conflict about, well, that's not really who I am, but this is what the world's telling me I'm supposed to be. And that sends people into turmoil.
Yes. And that's
to make bad choices.
Right. And that's a perfect analogy. And there are tremendous societal implications around women's voices and men's voices. But you know, what you're talking about there is classic. This is a classic spiral. I have to be nice. Okay, I'll be nice. And then it gets locked in because literally 30 days or less, you create a habit and lock it into the muscle memory. And then because the opposite of if you're not nice and you're a woman in business, then you know what you are. You're the B word, right?
Yep.
And so now you've got a woman in leadership who can't quite get to that next level because they're processing that sound as, why are you asking me? I thought you were the expert. And it's all going down subconsciously. And there she is going, why can't I get to the next level? Well, and a lilt is the same thing. If everything's becoming a question, they're absolutely going to process that as, I thought this woman was the expert. So it becomes this sabotage. And most people don't fully comprehend the power of their voice. And so they can spend a lifetime in this loop, right?
Yes. I'm so glad you're here explaining this to listeners because it isn't something that's commonly talked about. It isn't out there in a big way. And it's important. It's so important, especially for those reasons you just shared, getting promoted. I just had a conversation with a woman named Michelle Ashby. Her episode is dropping soon. She is on a mission to get more women on corporate boards. I guarantee you most corporate boards are made up of men. And there's unconscious bias going on, not just because a woman is a woman, but because of the sound of her voice. If a man I would imagine, is triggered by a woman's voice, it reminds him of his mother and he didn't like his mother or he didn't like how he felt because his mother made him feel small or tried to emasculate him. Wow. Yeah, that's big.
It's huge. And, you know, to swing it over to men for a minute, I'll get a lot of men, and not a criticism, societal or backstory drivers is what I call them. And they've got something to prove. And I'll say, you know, I remember one guy very specifically, and he came to me because he said, Tracy, I think I'm repelling customers. And I said, well, you are. And he said, how do you know? And I said, what are you trying to prove? And he said, how did you hear that? And I said, that's what I do. And he said, I spent my whole, he said, well, get this. He said, I spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to my father. And I said, well, we're going to go ahead and move that out because it's no longer serving you. And we did. It was because it was this defense that said, I'm not letting you in. I know what I'm doing here. And it was repelling people. So it's all shapes and sizes. I do think the research probably more significant around women's voices. And even that data that you were talking about, they have done research to show that when it comes to politics, men's voices are much more likely to be voted for than women's voices.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't surprise me at all. It does not surprise me at all. And this is so interesting to me as somebody who's in the audio only space.
Yes.
And all the things that are happening when someone is listening to us talk.
Yes. It literally becomes about, how are you making me feel?
Yeah.
And nobody ever mentioned that in school. We focused on the, right? We focused on the words and the sentence structure, and all that stuff's important. And people are just stunned when I say, okay, great. Now, how do you want me to feel?
Mm-hmm.
What? Do you want me to feel like I can trust you? Do you want me to feel like, you know what you're talking about? Do you want me to feel, and see, this to make another loop. If I'm hiding behind a bunch of masks and I'm not showing you who I am, you don't know who I am. You cannot go, yep, there's my girl right there. That's the one I need to hire. She gets me. Because I've not shown it to you, because I'm being something else. And here's another one that I think your audience will probably relate to, that I hear daily. Well, I've got to be professional, Tracy.
Oh my gosh.
All day long. All day long.
Oh, I'll tell you, Tracy, I see that also.
Do you?
In a different way than obviously you see it I think most likely far more than I do. However, I see it enough. I just had that conversation yesterday about a website, and what does it mean to have a website that sends a certain message? And my point was, I know you have to be professional. I mean, those words came out of my mouth. And then I said, but what does that mean exactly? Right? What is that mask of being corporate, being professional? It means, or does it mean, never let them see you sweat, never let them see you lose your cool, never let them see you smile. All these lines that we've heard culturally over and over and over and over again. And men hear different lines than women. Oh,
for sure. For sure. And, I see it daily, this professional. And one of the things I was diving into a little more research on this mask recently, because I'm truly fascinated with these sounds that I hear in these masks and how put labels to them. But I really got to thinking about professional. I've got to be professional means I cannot under any circumstances let you know who I really am, because that may not be good enough. And so we've got hundreds of thousands of people that are being professional, and literally that is the biggest game changer for the people I work with. I literally, okay, where is Fun Jody? I need Fun Jody, because they've got this perception that, well, I'm professional. This is this either or thinking. I'm professional, or what? You're going to be dancing on the conference table, swinging your shirt over your head? No, there is an in between. But the subconscious, you see, wants us to buy into all these, what I call lies of the mind, so that you won't reveal who you are, because that is safer. And it goes all the way back to, I've got to keep you safe. And the voice is the utmost place of judgment. So we're going to shut that down.
And it ends up being the thing that drives people away.
Yes.
Exactly what you don't want.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, it's just, it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
I've done this really now forever, my whole lifetime, really, my whole career life. And I'm still fascinated by it every single day, every day.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I can tell. Yeah. Yeah. Well, to make the transition into this next part of the show as we begin to wind things down, this is the part of the show I call Touchdown. I mean, to me, as a football fan, I'm always fascinated at how these players do their work and score their goals. So, Tracy, I'm putting you in the red zone with less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You are down by 4 points. It's third down, and it is now or never. Tell us a story about a time when you metaphorically ran the ball into the end zone for that game-winning touchdown.
Well, I feel like I get to do that every single day. And I'm actually going to make this answer, I guess, about me, but I guess really it's about the people that I work with and getting to plug in something where their eyes light up and I know that their entire existence just shifted. And that came from all the way back to that story where I heard that voice in my head that said, "What are you doing?" And so I have to go back to that story. And so the red zone moment for me was embracing that I had a gift and that I had a purpose and that it didn't look like anything that I thought it was going to look like or what it was really in my mind's eye supposed to be. And then getting to replay that red zone moment every single day for people.
That's so cool. That really is. You are a lucky woman.
Yeah, I really am. I really am.
Yeah. And for listeners who might like to make some forward progress in the way they use their voice, could you share 1 to 3 key offensive strategies straight out of your leadership playbook that wouldn't be over the moon in terms of, wow, I could never do that, but just some simple strategies that might make them more aware of their voice or they could actually start practicing?
Sure. Well, I'm going to go back to the first and foremost, the one we talked about earlier. Get in the now. And that's probably that's actually one of the hardest things I can give. So I'll give some easier things. But you do that by starting to pay attention to how much you're not in the now. Mm-hmm. Right? It will blow your mind, really, to see how in the future, I got to control this. I got to work that. I got to figure that out. That is one of the most important things is start to get present. Fantastic that you can multitask, but that's costing you, right? Mm-hmm. I can have those 42 things I've got to do after this interview, but I am here right now because when you are in the now, that is when your voice will go to work. When you're in your head, everything is it's as if you're going banana, 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 right? Your voice won't work. Okay. So you got to get in the now. Another thing that might not sound voice related at all, but is critical is stop deciding what we're thinking. Stop deciding. I hear it all day long. Well, I can't do that because they're going to think did you ask them? Well, no. Okay, then stop deciding because 99.5% of the time, what you think we're thinking, we're not thinking. So you decide we think you sound horrible and you stop doing whatever you're doing. And we could very well be going, man, I wish I had that kind of courage. So stop deciding what we're thinking. The last one I'll give, 3, right? You want 3? 1 to 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Get comfortable in the pause. It is the most powerful tool I can give you because it tells your listener's subconscious that you care about them. So an example is I ask you a question, give it a slight pause. We get so fast. Do you want to make more money? Because I can show you how to make more money. Here we go. We get going fast. Do you want me to teach you that? Because I can teach you that. Right? We're pushing to that outcome. Get in the now and find places to stop talking, pause, so that I register how much you care about me. And that's a game changer right there.
It is. It absolutely is. It reminds me of an early episode where I did an experiment. This was in my first year of podcasting. And I decided that I was going to edit out all the pauses, all the breaths, everything. It is the worst episode. It sounds so artificial and so unnatural because our ears, our minds, all of the senses that play into how we interpret sound need to hear those pauses. We need to hear breath because we hear that when we're talking with somebody in a live setting.
Right.
Why would we Now, if there's this obnoxious wheeze or some kind of hacking, you don't want to hear that necessarily.
Right.
But what you're getting at, spot on. And I have learned to pause.
Yeah.
I have learned to do that. And it has made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear it when I listen back to shows. I pick up on it when I hear other people doing it. I'm like, aha, they've done it. And the ones like you just said, that is such a turnoff to me.
Mm-hmm.
I hear somebody talking a mile a minute and trying to jam a gazillion ideas into one breath. You've lost me immediately, and I'm gone.
Yeah. Well, it's the weakest of all the voice choices. And yet people do it because they've got some internal story. I got to hurry up and I got to prove to her. I got to get all this out. I got to get to the other side of this. They're looking at me, I mean, a million reasons. And you're right. I'm out. I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm out. But that pausing, and you clearly do it so well. It makes me feel, because I'm going to always go back to feeling, it makes me feel like you're really listening, because you are. You're right here with me. And it makes me feel like you're interested in what I have to say. You're not just trying to hurry up and get okay, great, but let's talk about this. It creates a long game memory where when I think about you or when I'm looking, whatever, I'm always going to pull you up first in my mind because of how you made me feel.
Exactly. Well, for people who are curious about you and your services, Tracy, where do you hang out online?
Well, I hang out mostly at my website, which is captivatetheroom.com, but I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I do have a podcast, all of which are Captivate the Room. And now I'm trying out Clubhouse. I'm getting on the Clubhouse scene, and that is, you use your name on Clubhouse. So that's Tracy Goodwin.
Okay. Well, team, you know that I will put links to connect with Tracy on her show notes page over at pyppodcast.com. And if you enjoyed today's conversation and want to learn about your own voice and how it may be attracting people or repelling them, as the case may be, I would encourage you to get into Tracy's world at some level, test drive her. Beyond our conversation today, check her out on Clubhouse, see what she's up to on the other channels. But this has been really eye-opening and ear-opening to me, what you shared. And I imagine Team PYP is thinking the same thing.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
The Right to Grow Writing Workshop is for fiercely independent business owners, freelancers, and solopreneurs who aren't getting everything you can out of your current writing efforts. In this workshop, you will learn how to write more efficiently and effectively to grow your business. Students love my small workshops because I create a safe space for self-discovery and collaboration. Also, you're not alone on your path to growing your business when you become a part of the Right to Grow family. Listen, running a business comes with a lot of challenges. Writing shouldn't be one of them. Learn more about this dynamic experiential workshop at pyppodcast.com/W2G. That's pyppodcast.com/W2G. I look forward to seeing you inside the Right to Grow cohort. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Got a great key offensive strategy you like to share? Write to us at coach@pyppodcast.com or on Twitter, use #PYP and let us know how you're running your ball into the end zone for those game-winning touchdowns.